Thank you so very much, Madam Chair. And Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you again.
Likewise.
I know that you've been down to my home state of Georgia. You've been to Atlanta and my hometown of Savannah, and you've seen up close the overpasses, the highways, the bridges that help Georgians get to where they need to go. But unfortunately, many of these bridges and highways were built directly through historic communities without any concern for how it would affect the folks who live there, disproportionately affecting historic Black communities. When we look at these bridges, these overpasses, it's kind of landscape history of the arc of our country. These projects contributed to poor air quality in the communities, diminished access to jobs and economic opportunity, literally split communities in half. And they disrupted the rich culture of these neighborhoods. I was down in my hometown of Savannah, Georgia, and some of the folks who were older than me were talking about how the community, the very community where I grew up, had once been a vibrant jazz community, restaurants, Black businesses, all disrupted by I-16 that literally goes straight through the middle of these communities. And then Sweet Auburn Avenue, where I serve as pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church. Historic community, lots of Black businesses, America's largest concentration, in fact, of Black-owned businesses, also disrupted. When we look at these structures built in the name of urban renewal, this is structural racism in the most literal sense of the word. And that's why I fought to reverse the damage done by highways and other large infrastructure projects by securing $1 billion in the bipartisan infrastructure law for the Reconnecting Communities program. And so, Mr. Secretary, what is the Transportation Department's timeline for implementing this very important program that I think in a literal sense builds what Dr. King called the beloved community? And how will you ensure that the program accomplishes our goals?
Thank you, Senator. We are hard at work at delivering the first year's funding for the Reconnecting Communities pilot program that you and your colleagues have provided. $195 million will be ready to go out in a notice of funding opportunity that we hope to put forward by the end of June. And what we already know is that there will be applications from places around the country like those that you cited in Georgia. We've seen it everywhere from Jackson Ward in Richmond that I visited not too long ago to the area around I-81 in Syracuse to the Hill District in Pittsburgh. And often, as you said, tearing the fabric of communities and knowing that transportation infrastructure ought to connect and never to divide. We recognize the moral as well as policy imperative to ensure that if federal dollars went into those divisions, federal dollars go into healing them as well.
Thank you so much. And, you know, as I talked to the folks down in Savannah, they were very excited to hear about this, and I hope we can deliver for those folks in Atlanta and all across our country who are on the underside of this shameful legacy of progress at the expense of certain historic communities. I always feel pride, you know, I'm sorry to talk about Savannah so much, but that's my hometown. And one of the things I'm proud of is Savannah's port and how they showed remarkable ingenuity and adaptability in the face of supply chain challenges last year. For example, they were the ones who came up with the idea of using pop-up container yards to unclog the port and keep supply chains running. And I'm glad that I was able to work with you and your office, work well with us to secure more than $8 million for the Georgia Ports Authority to alleviate congestion at the Port of Savannah and fund these pop-up container yards. How did funding for the Port of Savannah and the rest of Georgia's transportation network support the department's national priorities for improving transportation infrastructure and restoring supply chain resiliency?
Well, you rightly have a lot to be proud of in terms of the work that's gone on with the Georgia Ports Authority and the Port of Savannah, and appreciate you highlighting in particular the creativity of problem solving that went into concepts like that pop-up or temporary container yard, an approach that's now being emulated in Oakland in the Pacific Northwest, and I think will continue to be emulated in other areas of the country as well, and one that matters not only for the import of goods, but for the export of agricultural products, which is one area where Savannah leads. We think that those kinds of flexible and original approaches need to be matched with more permanent improvements, which we are now able to make thanks to the funding in this bipartisan infrastructure law on everything from the ports themselves to the rails and highways that connect them to the rest of the country.
Well, thank you for your work on this. I'm glad I was able to secure $11 billion for Georgia's roads, bridges, highways, ports, other critical infrastructure. I look forward to working with you on this and also reconnecting these communities.
Likewise, thank you.